You're watching Worth Valley Telly, and coming up in just a few moments, the first ever episode of Following the Men of Worth.
Hello, my name is Ian Walkton. Along with Andy and Helen Wade, we are members of the Men of Worth Project CIC. We are social historians specialising in the people of this district who served their nation in times of war. Today we are holding an event at Keighley Library. It is a week where the nation has been remembering 100 years since the start of the Battle of the Somme in 1916. This is very interesting. Just been given a request from a lady whose ancestors had served in both the Sherwood Foresters and the Duke of Wellington's regiment in World War I. This could be quite interesting, Andy.
Well, notice we've got his address here, 62 Mornington Street in Keighley, so we'll check through census records and see if we can pick up any family members. There may also be brothers who were of serving age, so we can look into them as well and see if we can find any information about that. If they've got service records or pension records, we'll move into that and look for his pension record as well.
The good thing about this one is that there is quite a bit of information there, which the Keighley News, for instance, his military medal. Yeah. All these things can lead us down, and most important of all, regiment and his number, which gives us a
we can at least
start.
Pick up medal records there and show the medal rolls, and it might tell us which regiments and battalions he was in when he was serving in the army, because they often change around, don't they? I think we'll be all right with this. We've got enough information to get a good start on this man anyway, and we'll have a good look and see if we can pick him up on any memorials or rolls of honour, and see if his name's mentioned, school or something.
Well, we know
like that.
The memorials are in St Anne's. We know they're there. So our first task is to remove all the dead ends using the information immediately available to us. The relative who asked us to do this research and wishes to remain anonymous has written on a form that Thomas Kennedy was part of the Sherwood Foresters, as well as the Duke of Wellington's regiment, along with their service numbers. Using the service numbers, we are now going to track down Thomas Kennedy's war pension records. Whilst Andy's doing that, I'm popping a few doors along to St Anne's Catholic Church to a familiar war memorial. I had a look at the St Anne's records. I cannot find anywhere a Thomas Kennedy. But I can find a Patrick Kennedy.
No, okay, so it could be related.
Could be related. I know it's quite a common name at St Anne's, but it could be related.
Now, I managed to find a pension record. I'm not sure if it's him or not, but if we just check the first page, it'll tell us whether the service number matches up with this. And yes, it does.
54228.
Now, that's the Sherwood Foresters one, that's not on it.
53690.
Yeah, that's correct. We've got that one. So that's his pension record. Now, if he's got a pension record, he's probably survived the war.
Which is good.
Which was why he's not on the war memorial. Yeah. So that will answer that. But we'll see if we can find a link between these two men. They could possibly be cousins or brothers or something like that. But we'll look further into that one. And just looking here, it says he's from Ireland, which would figure with the Roman Catholic connection. And Kennedy is an Irish name, isn't it? Yeah.
Unusual that there's only one.
Yes. Well, we'll look further into that. It does actually mention his military medal here as well. He's got a military medal, so we'll look and see if we can find any information on that subject as well, and see if there's any medal records that'll give us any more information.
Whilst Andy checked out the pension record he'd recovered, I started to see if there was any information about Thomas Kennedy's life outside of the war, in order to work back from there. Within half an hour, Andy managed to track down the pension records, which raised more questions than they answered.
Well, we seem to have got into a bit of a conundrum here, because we've looked at pension records for Thomas Kennedy, and we've found that there appears to be two men. We've got one man who was born in 1901 and joined the army in 1919, and then we've got another man who was born in 1876 and he died in 1919, aged 41. So that brings some confusion here as to which record's which. So we're going to have to go through this pension record and sort out which man is which and try and find out which is the man we're really interested in, who was the Thomas Kennedy who won the military medal in the army in the World War One. I don't think it's the younger man. I think it's going to be the older man, but we'll see. We'll see what we find when we go through it.
So Thomas had an extended family. Now we need to filter the results and narrow down our search to just the Thomas Kennedy we're researching. But it seems we just need to clear up the confusion over the dates, and then we will be able to find more conclusive information.
Things are starting to get a little bit interesting, because having started with just one man, Thomas Kennedy, a military medal winner, or so we think, we're now looking at Patrick Kennedy, who we found on a local war memorial. So he is one of our men, so while we're on the subject we might as well look at him at the same time, see if we can find out any family relationship there, if there is one. And also we look to have two Thomas Kennedys in the pension records, and we have to separate the two. We would like to make sure that we're thorough in this, and that we make sure that we thoroughly research each man, because any problems of that could come out later and then you get all mixed up. So we have to be clear on what we're looking at. So we're going to separate the pension records out, and we want to make sure that we've got the right man. Now, if we look at the Thomas Kennedy that we've got on the Keithley's Gallant Sons, there's also P. Kennedy, who's very probably the Patrick Kennedy that we mentioned earlier that is on the St. Anne's War Memorial. We don't know if they're related yet. We're looking at that. There's also a James Kennedy. Now, we know that Thomas L. Kennedy, the younger man, had a James Kennedy older brother. This thing is growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. As you start to look at one part of the family, you find that you find more men that are possibly eligible for war service, and we need to look further into those to see which ones we can research further.
We have three men named T. Kennedy, but with different regimental numbers. So we need to work out which is our man. I'm spending the next few hours finding out just who is and who isn't connected to Thomas Kennedy. And Andy is going back to look at Keithley's Gallant Sons, a record of those who served during the First World War from Keithley, which is housed in Keithley's reference library.
We looked at the records that we found before, and there was a bit of a problem, because the man that we were looking at, Thomas Kennedy, was born in 1901. This meant that he would have been unable to serve in the army during the First World War, because he would have been underage. That didn't stop underage men serving, but we think that Thomas Kennedy, who won the military medal, our man, actually joined up in 1914. And the reason we say that is because we found his name in Keithley's Gallant Sons, which was a list of volunteers who served as volunteers in the early part of the war. And that was produced later in the war to honour the men who had actually volunteered. When we look at it, we find Thomas Kennedy of 62 Mornington Street, which is the address that's been supplied to us by the relative. So we know it's the same man. if that had been the younger man who was born in 1901, he'd have been very, very young. He'd have only been 13 or 14 years old, so we don't think it's him at all. So we've discounted his records and started to look for Thomas Kennedy, who was older. We found his record from the London Gazette, which is the government's official record of all government business. And that's actually given us the date at which he was actually awarded the military medal, and he was actually 265447 Corporal T. Kennedy of the West Riding Regiment, and it actually says that he was from Keighley, so we're pretty sure that that's our man. And that's a different service number from the service number of the young man who joined in 1919, who couldn't possibly be him because he was underage. So that rules out the man that we were looking at earlier. It's part of the process. Sometimes you draw a blank and you just move on from that and try to find the information that you're really looking for.
Now we need to filter the results and narrow down our search to just the Thomas Kennedy we're researching. But it seems we just need to clear up the confusion over the dates, and then we will be able to find more conclusive information. It is now mid-afternoon, and we have enough information to give a chronological order of Thomas Kennedy's life in and around the First World War.
We've now managed to find out all the information that's good about Thomas Kennedy. We know that he finished his service career as a sergeant and a military medal holder from the First World War. We think that he was born on the 23rd of August 1894. And his parents were Martin and Ellen Kennedy. In 1901 in the census, he was living at 9 Morehouse Street with his parents, 3 sisters and 1 brother. And his father's occupation was a labourer in an iron foundry. In 1907, however, his father Martin Kennedy died. We found a report from the coroner that said his body was found in the river at Stockbridge in Keighley. And that his coat was on the side of the riverbank. There is some evidence from his wife that he did get drunk occasionally on the weekend, so that's possibly a factor, but there was nothing said in the coroner's record about that, just that there were no marks on his body.
The drowned body of Martin Kennedy was found on a stretch of River Aire at Stockbridge behind this site, now a fish and chip shop and a car park, which in 1907 would have housed a factory.
This was when Thomas was 12 years old, so it would have had a huge impact on the man, on the young man, having lost his father at such an early age. In 1909 his mother remarried to Martin Lynch, and they had another child, a daughter called Frances, born a year later. In 1914 he joined the army very early in the war, and he's listed in Keighley's Gallant Sons, which is all the volunteers from Keighley that joined up early. They were honoured for their voluntary service early on in the war. He went out with the Duke of Wellington's West Riding Regiment to France on the 14th of April 1915, and he's listed in the nominal roll for the 1st 6th Battalion.
And this is where Thomas Kennedy lived, at 62 Mornington Street, Keighley.
We know that during the war that he was wounded because he was buried by an explosion, which probably collapsed part of the trench onto him and some other men, and he served some time in hospital for that, and then eventually went back out to the trenches. Later on in his career he was promoted to corporal, and whilst a corporal he earned the military medal. We don't know why he earned the military medal, what he did to earn that, because unfortunately records have not been kept for those. There's no citation as such. After the war he came out, he went into Class Z Reserve on the 19th of March 1919, and then because the war didn't kick off again, he went back to civilian life. He married Winifred Feenan in 1924, and they moved to 16 King Street in Keighley, and they lived there with his wife and his mother-in-law, Mary Feenan. Mary actually had another son, John, who is listed on the St Anne's Church War Memorial as having been killed in the war. Thomas Kennedy died in 1971, aged 77 years, and that was registered in the Worth Valley area. And that's pretty much all we've managed to find out about him. All this information we found out is all from the archive record, but we still don't have a photograph for this man, and it's one of the things we would like to get, because you can then see the face of the man that you've found the research on.
And be sure to join Ian and Andy again in a few weeks' time when they research a plaque for Crossroads Parish Council.